Version 4.1. Initializing upgrades. Accessing peace. Existing without violence, with the ability to calmly resolve conflict. Downloading love. An overwhelming, deep, positive affection towards others. Activating liberty. Living your life as you see fit without infringing on the lives of others.
Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. I am your host, Darryl W. Perry. And you know, on Friday, you may have noticed something strange. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But on Friday, there was that great DDoS, the distributed disruption something attack, denial of service, distributed denial of service attack that took down SoundCloud for a little bit, took down Twitter, took down several other sites. So if you were looking for the archive of this show, and well, for you, it wouldn't be the archive unless you're, catching us live, or actually you would not be catching us live, but, catching the replay on one of our affiliates, and then you're like, I want to go listen to the show, and you go to FPP Radio. Well, it might not have been there for several hours on Friday. That's because SoundCloud was down for a little bit because of that DDoS, but it's back up. Everything seems to be working all right now, and that is good. Now, I'm kind of keeping with the theme from last week. Last Monday, last Friday, we were talking about habits, ways to wind up tricking yourself into creating new ones, how to get rid of bad habits. And, well, there's something that is very fitting that I stumbled across today: how our brains sabotage our efforts to break bad habits. You heard that right. Our brains actually sabotage our own efforts to break bad habits. And this is mostly because, if you remember, we went over that the habit cycle, where there's the cue, there's the response, then there's the reward. And it's that reward that winds up hurting us. But it's not just, well, I guess it all is all in your brain. It's all in your mind. That is where the reward comes in. The story here from Russia Today, and they're actually citing a study by Johns Hopkins University. They say it hardly comes as a surprise that we are our own worst enemies, but new research appears to conclusively prove that our brain is the biggest saboteur of success and leads to self-deception on a grand scale. The culprit: dopamine. You heard that right. Dopamine. As some of you may already know, dopamine is the chemical that gives us pleasure whenever we receive a reward. That's easy for me to say. I will not say that 5 times fast, but I will try to say that again. Dopamine is the chemical that gives us pleasure whenever we receive a reward. So, what if you promised yourself to start getting up earlier or eating dinner at a preset time? According to new research from Johns Hopkins University, none of this really matters because the memory of something much sweeter always lingers in the brain. Professor Susan Courtney at the Department of Psychological and Brain Sciences at Johns Hopkins University said, "We don't realize our past experience biases our attention to certain things. Memories of burgers past are alluring because dopamine." That's right. Dopamine in our brain keeps the memory very real. To get our juices flowing, all we need is a reminder of that past reward. Even without the promise of new similar experiences, the image in our mind is enough to render self-control useless. So if somebody ever asks you, why can you not get rid of this habit? Say it's all in my mind. Because it is dopamine. Dopamine is in your mind. It's the chemical that when you experience happy things, dopamine, it's going. And no, I know that some of you have probably watched Waterboy, and when I said happy, you immediately thought of what Bobby Boucher told the professor that he called Colonel Sanders. But Mama says that happiness comes from special rays of sunshine that come down when you're feeling blue. No, happiness comes from dopamine. Dopamine comes from when you wind up doing something and your brain's like, ooh, I like that. Then, boop, dopamine. For this reason, dopamine, this is the reason that addiction cycles are notoriously hard to break. And the more you deprive yourself of something, the more likely your nervous system is to fire off memories whenever an irritant manifests itself. Professor Courtney jokes, I could choose healthy food or unhealthy food, but my attention keeps being drawn to fettuccine Alfredo. What we tend to look at, think about, and pay attention to is whatever we've done in the past that was rewarded. To arrive at their conclusions, the authors of the study played a little computer game with 20 participants, which involved a small financial reward every time the respondent located a red or green object on a screen filled with a myriad of other colored objects. They would get $1.50 for spotting a red object, but only 25 cents for spotting a green one. You can guess what happened. The respondents then slept on it and were asked to play another game the following day, but this time they were asked to locate particular shapes. Color and size did not matter. There was also no reward involved. Can you guess what happened? If you said that the respondents would zoom in and zone in and zero in on the red objects before the other ones, you would be correct. I'll explain a little bit more here in moments on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. And hopefully while you're listening, the dopamine receptors are going off, and that means you enjoyed the show, right? Hopefully. Stay tuned. You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates, like Namecheap, Spendabit, and Amazon at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. Or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. That's shop.fppradio.com. The Doublespeak Dictionary by Leslie Starr O'Hara satirizes the marked difference between the ideal of we the people and the reality of we the elite, while offering an insightful glimpse into the clockworks of the totalitarian mind. Ever irreverent but never irrelevant, the Doublespeak Dictionary serves as a subversive and humorous but timely reminder that the emperor has no clothes. The Doublespeak Dictionary is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry. Online at fppradio.com.
Dopamine receptors activate. Yes, that's right. We're talking about the reason that you cannot break your bad habits. Dopamine is the reason. And it's not just me pulling this out of my brain. There's actually been some research to prove this. Again, there was the study at Johns Hopkins University. Professor Courtney and some others wound up bringing in participants, 20 of them. Said, want to play a game? Although probably not in a creepy little voice with the little guy with the spirals on his face. And what they did is on day one, they had people pick out a red or a green object on a screen out of a myriad of colors. You find the red object, you get $1.50. You find a green object, you get 25 cents. You go to sleep, wake up the next morning. This time you're asked to locate particular shapes. Size and color don't matter. And there's no reward. Participants then zeroed in on the red objects before the other objects. While they took part in the exercise, the researchers conducted PET scans on the participants and found the part of the brain associated with attention lit up with dopamine. Additionally, those who focused on the red objects more than others experienced higher levels of dopamine. Professor Courtney says there's something about past reward association that's still causing a dopamine release. That stimulus has been incorporated into the reward system. There are variables that affect this. Some people who are prone to addictive behavior, as well as those who are depressed, will show different responses. The first group, however, generally can't help but feel more exhilaration, while the latter tend to pay much less attention to rewards. Johns Hopkins, or rather the team at Johns Hopkins, believe these results are sufficient to start thinking of a pharmaceutical way to address this chemical imbalance. So this is where I sort of divert from the whole, this is a really neat study. Now they're talking about, let's make a pill to where everybody can be the exact same. And that is one of the problems with the current pharmaceutical thing, right? Is we need to make pills to where everybody acts the exact same. No, screw that. Now, I will say that there are some people whose, chemical imbalance in their brain is so far off that they can't function. But your average person can function normally. And I use normally there as kind of a weird word because there really is no normal, right? But, your average person that's like, oh, well, I've got anxiety, I need to take this pill. Well, no, the pill just makes you feel better. Maybe it does something, but everybody gets a little, nervous and anxious in certain situations. You're functioning fine, but here, have a placebo sort of thing. But we need to find a way to make sure that everybody's dopamine is the same so that everybody responds to rewards the same way or nobody responds to rewards at all. And I don't really know where they're going here, but it is kind of scary. And this leads me into the next article. Actually, no, you know what? Let me pull up this other one about why you need to stop comparing yourself to others. I thought I had that one pulled up, but I actually had an article pulled up about how to tell if you're a healer. I'll probably get to that one on Friday. But since we're talking about, kind of comparing people to other people, let's talk about why we need to stop comparing ourselves to other people. The article comes from a website titled inspire.co. 13 reasons you need to stop comparing yourself to others. They begin by saying, find yourself comparing your ways, your looks, material things, and more to others? Below are 13 reasons why you need to stop comparing yourself to others. And I want to remind you that a lot of times I'm speaking to myself as much as I'm talking to you. I've said numerous times that this show is kind of like therapy for Darryl, and it is. I'm somewhat in a reclined position. My head's on a pillow when it's not leaned forward a little bit to look at my computer screen. So, this is self-help for me as much it is for you. And I hope that you get as much out of this as I do. But, as my friend Brian Sovereign says about his podcast, I do this for me as much as I do it for anybody. So, even if nobody was listening, and I know that there are, and I'm glad that you are, and my sponsors are glad that you are as well, But, even if nobody was listening, I would still do this because it's therapeutic for me. So, let me continue. They say, remember that your life is going to be different and your experiences do not need to be like those of your peers in order for you to be great or worth it. Just be you. So here are the 13 reasons you need to stop comparing yourself to other people. Number 1 on the list, your experiences are going to be different. Regardless of how hard you may try to emulate someone else's life, your experiences will always, in the end, turn out differently. We all learn and observe things according to our own understandings. While we can definitely learn from others, the outcome for us may differ from what they have gone through. True, we learn right and wrong from what is considered moral and from historical and present circumstances, but our life is our own. Our minds, what we see, how we feel, is going to differ from one person to the next. And that's one of the things that makes, this thing called life interesting, right? Because how boring would life be if everybody was the same? Even if everybody was like you, or if you were the only person that was different and everybody else was exactly alike, things would be boring. If everybody was an alpha or a beta and there were no deltas and gammas, and I'm using that in the Brave New World sense, not the weird right-wing, alt-right social justice, I'm not an SJW, but, something conservative kind of way. If everybody was, the same, things would be boring. There's more here on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
It is the year 91,001 BCE. Witness humanity's origins in Hyperchronius, a classic role-playing game for Windows PCs with a story like no other game before. A liberty-oriented experience that is not to be missed. Go to zog.ninja to get your copy of Hyperchronius today. Use the code FPP to get $1 off. Hyperchronius, zog.ninja, code FPP.
You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and Numery supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month through Patreon and get perks like ad-free versions of FPP Radio News and Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's fans.fppradio.com.
Hi, I'm Nick Hazelton from the Anarcho-Yakutalism podcast, and you're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
Hey, welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. And my thought was cut short there with the end of that segment. And I know that, some people are like, but you're doing a podcast, just move the break. No, that's not how I do this thing. I do this podcast like I'm doing a live radio show. The breaks are set. They do not move. The end of the show happens. It's the end of the show. I don't do after shows because that's just the way I do this thing. So the first thing here on 13 reasons why you need to stop comparing yourself to others. Your experiences are going to be different. Our minds, what we see, how we feel is going to be different from one person to the next. And what I was saying is, wouldn't it be incredibly boring if there were no deltas and gammas and, epsilon and, so on and so forth? And again, I'm using those terms in the Brave New World sense. And if you've not read the book, I'll give you, some info on it. Hashtag spoiler, I guess. I don't know, because it's all kind of, part of the plot. So in Brave New World, there are these, clones of clones of clones that are generally referred to as the deltas and the epsilons and the gammas. The alphas and the betas are a lot more unique. And again, if you're not familiar with the Greek alphabet, alpha is the first letter, beta is the second letter, I believe gamma is the third letter, then delta, then epsilon, so on and so forth. So, the alphas and the betas, the top two sort of classes, very unique to one another, very individualistic. The gammas and the deltas and the epsilons are clones of clones of clones of one another. So no real individual characteristics. And, in Brave New World, everybody gets these pills. I forget what the name of it is, but it, basically causes them to, just zone out after work. So you go to work, you're a cog in the machine, you get off work, you go home, you take this pill, and then, you do whatever you wind up doing that has absolutely no productive value at all. Next on the list, comparing, and the point that I was making is that, if everybody was the same, life would be boring. Next on the list, comparing limits individuality. And this sort of fits in. You are an individual, and that is how it's always going to be. Why compare yourself to others when everything you do is going to be unique to you? Represent who you are and understand what it is that makes you distinct. Embrace what makes you special, and let go of all the superficiality that often comes with comparison. Why would you ever want to be like other people anyway? Take pride in who you are. Next on the list, comparing yourself to others only adds more stress to your life. And this is probably the biggest reason, in my mind, to not compare yourself to others or to stop doing it if you are. When we spend so much time dissecting others and focusing all of our attention on everything from someone else's clothing to physique and mental state, we lose sight of important things which add more stress in our lives. Stress can leave us in even worse emotional states, eventually breaking us down. While this may seem extreme, it is definitely a possibility. Focus on yourself, and if you seek to make changes in your life, focus on ways to get there. Sure, someone else can inspire you, but be aware of your own capabilities and what it is you actually want. In other words, do not model your life completely based off of someone else. Otherwise, you will find that the road to get you there is a never-ending cycle of failed attempts and detrimental stress because you cannot be like someone else. And I will speed through the rest of this list. As always, the link will be in the show notes. You can read the accompanying paragraphs if you want to. Next on the list of reasons to stop comparing yourselves to others. Comparing yourself makes you less content for what you have. It creates bitterness. It limits self-awareness. And I'll actually read a little bit. Here they say comparing ourselves to others limits the ability of time we actually take to become more mindful of our lives. The amount of attention we really focus on what everyone else is doing takes away from our own purpose in life and figuring out what you are actually passionate about. Comparing yourselves to other people makes us feel inferior. It is dangerous to mental health. It is often inaccurate. How so? When we compare ourselves to others, we do so without taking the things that got someone to where they are in context. We often ignore the full picture and only see the things that stand out most to us. This inaccurate way of understanding others often leads us into judgment of others, which in turn cannot and will not work to our advantage. And it's also like going to a car show and you're looking at, the way the people want you to see the cars or see themselves, but maybe the car looks really, really good, but that engine inside doesn't work. Comparing does not help in accomplishing any goals. It creates jealousy and bitterness. It leaves us feeling lonely and isolated, and it is not a win-win situation. Stay tuned. There's more here on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and numerous supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $1 per month through Patreon and get perks like ad-free versions of FPP Radio News and Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's fans.fppradio.com.
Cell 411 is a free app for Android and iOS that replaces government-controlled 911. Cell 411 allows you to preset a group of friends or private organizations to show up in any emergency. Cell 411 is a nightmare for the state because it proves their so-called services aren't needed. Cell 411 has had thousands of installs, and of course it's covered by the BIPCOT no government license. Cell 411 because your friends won't shoot you when you're in trouble. Without the government, who would build the emergency services? You and Cell 411. Get it today at getcell411.com. That's getcell411.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
Let's go back over this list very, very quickly on why you should stop comparing yourself to others and why Darryl needs to stop comparing himself to other people. Your experiences are going to be different. Comparing limits individuality. Comparing yourself to other people only adds more stress to your life. It makes you less content with what you have. It creates bitterness, limits self-awareness, makes us feel inferior, is dangerous to mental health, is often inaccurate, does not help in accomplishing any goals, creates jealousy and bitterness, leaves us feeling lonely and isolated, and is a no-win situation. They actually say here it's not a win-win situation. Comparing is never a winning situation. We gain nothing from comparisons except a limited appreciation of our own existence and a highly judgmental attitude. So, let it go, something, I don't know the rest of the words, but let it go, get back to being you, what makes you unique and awesome? And that's actually a question. What does make you unique and awesome? Well, I'll tell you one thing that makes me unique and awesome, and that is the fact that I use Bitcoin. Hopefully you do too. And hopefully you use it as an alternative in this weird fiat-centric world that we live in. If you do, then you need Spend-A-Bit in your arsenal. Spend-A-Bit is the search engine for things you can buy with Bitcoin. Spend-A-Bit aggregates millions of products from thousands of Bitcoin-enabled merchants. Keep your money in the free economy. Spend-A-Bit. Use my affiliate link, spendabit.fppradio.com. And if you're a Bitcoin-accepting merchant, like I am, ask about their merchant suite to reach even more customers. That's spendabit.fppradio.com. And I was actually just on the site a little bit ago. And, yeah, there are, a bunch of things on here. And, again, the greatest part of it is you can use Bitcoin, and they actually say that there are over 2.5 million products right now on their site that you can buy with Bitcoin. I just did a search for book, and they have 19,360 items matching the keyword book. Stuff from Overstock.com, Free Press Publications, SurvivalFood.com, and so many more. We'll be back on Wednesday. I'll be answering your questions. Send those over ama@fppradio.com.
The podcasts of FPP Radio are licensed under Copy Heart. We believe that copying is a form of flattery and do not abide by the copyright laws. Those laws serve to restrict the flow of ideas which no one can really own. Copying is an act of love. Love is not subject to law. If you enjoy the show, consider joining the Fans program and get perks like ad-free versions of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio and FPP Radio News, and also get a copy of the monthly newspaper FPP News. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com.